bold statement. And that statement is that your self-perception literally becomes your reality. It has to be that way. There is no choice in the long run. Okay, that's a very bold thing to say, but let me explain to you why I say that from my experience in the game, my experience in life, and my understanding of life. So here goes. Now, the most obvious examples of this would be things like approach anxiety or not stepping up to the hottest girls, that sort of stuff with relation to game. But the thing that really brought this point home to me was actually a lot of experiences I had in my life outside of game, and I want to talk to you about some of those as well to get the point across. Now, the first one was years and years ago. We were in Project Hollywood, and we were living with Courtney Love, who at the time was going through kind of a rough patch in her life, and she was actually very much in debt. And she made a deal with her agent where, I don't remember the exact amounts, but it was in millions of dollars. And it was a completely unreasonable deal. Her agent was like, there's no way this is gonna happen, just take the deal you're given, it's a smaller thing, but just take it, it's what's gonna happen, etc. And she made this unreasonable demand, and an hour later, he came back to her and said it had happened, and she'd gone from being basically massively in debt to actually being a millionaire again, like instantly, absolutely instantly. And I was shocked by that. I was like, wow, that was like such a fast transition. And now granted, she's an A-list celebrity, she has resources we don't have, but it was shocking how much her just insistence, her blind, stupid insistence, made something happen, and her belief that something was going to happen for her. And I talked about it with Herbal, who was one of the other people in the house, who was at the time much wealthier than I was and more successful in life. And he said, here's the difference between me and you and her. So when you think about money, because I was poor at the time, you think in like hundreds or maybe thousands of dollars. When I think about money, I think of maybe tens of thousands. When she thinks about money, she thinks about millions. And so when she's looking at the world or looking at opportunities, she sees opportunities with millions of dollars on them, whereas we see opportunities in the thousands or 10,000. We may not even notice an opportunity that's worth millions, or we may not even like grasp onto the fact that it is worth that much because we're still thinking in that narrow frame. And so by opening yourself up, by being willing to see things on that bigger perspective, you open yourself up to those opportunities. So it's quite possible that I may have had opportunities in my life to do things that are huge, to do things that are bigger than what I've done. And because I was looking at it through a narrow scope, because I was thinking, how do I make the next 1,000? How do I make rent? I'm not thinking, how do I get uber rich? And so that perception of myself as that guy that's in that station of life held me back. And I really do believe it's a self-perception thing. Now, granted, if you have life experiences, if you have a certain range of experiences where you start making more money, like say I'm thinking in thousands and then I start making $10,000 a month or something like that, then all of a sudden, yeah, I am thinking in tens of thousands, and now that's going to change my perception through experience. But the fact of the matter is there's no reason why I have to go through that step. If I have the talent level, if I have the ability to make that sort of level of earnings or that level of success in life, why do I have to go through that process? Mostly, I would argue, it's actually for self-perception. It's actually because the self needs to grow into that perception before it's even ready to accept those bigger things. I'll give you another similar example from the world of finance. I run an investment fund. I think it's a very good investment fund. I like the way that it's investing. It's where I put my own money, etc. I'm very happy with it. The success has been, with my own personal investing, has been pretty good. And the strategies are something I deeply, deeply believe in. And it's where I think, honestly, I've tried to make it the best possible fund it can be. And any investor should be happy to be in it. However, my strategy for attracting investors is not in line with that. What I have done is, because I haven't built an on-paper track record since the start of the fund, because I don't have that, because I don't have credentials in finance, I came to it, I think, with a bit of like an insecurity complex or a low self-esteem or whatever, and what I wanted to do was build an immense track record, build a really good track record with small amounts of money, and then go after the big amount of money. But there's really no reason, as long as I know that my strategies are good, as long as I know that it's legit, and as long as my track record prior to starting the fund is good and bears it out, there's no reason why I shouldn't go after the big money. I mean, granted, it may be harder to get without the tracker, without the credentials, but I should be open to it, and I should be actually looking for those opportunities as well. I shouldn't be closed off to them. But the fact of the matter is I've never gone out of my way to specifically pursue those sorts of opportunities, which again, I think is a personal failing of mine. And again, I think that I'm probably less susceptible to this than most people because I have had a life where my station in life has changed, where I've become much better at certain skills. So I can only imagine for normal average people what it must be for them. Last example relating to money with this is I was talking to a friend of mine, and I told her that if I were to get rich by winning the lottery, I would not like that. It's like, I want to do it my own way. I want to do it in a way that I earned it because of the aesthetic perception I have of my life. This idea that I bootstrapped myself up from nothing, and I made it on merit, and everything I made I earned and could make again. And fact of the matter is, that is aesthetically pleasing. It's a great story, rags to riches and all that. But the fact of the matter is, look, if I won the lottery, that's objectively a good thing for my life. And I could still take whatever I make there, whatever riches I make, and make bigger riches. I can still learn all the same lessons. But for me to say, oh, I don't want to do it that way. Oh, I don't want it to be one big lucky event. I want it to be me putting my nose to the grindstone. That makes me less open to those other lucky events. And I think that also plays in the same way to the fact that I haven't gone after really, really wealthy investors for my fund, because I don't want that one lottery event. I actually want to do it through the hard work and toil and actually build it in a sustainable, repeatable way, because that feeds into my self-image, right? Because my self-image, I would say, for better or for worse, is of someone very talented who has earned everything he's had in life and could replace everything again. Like, I don't own anything that I can't replace. And I like that in like a Buddhist sense. I basically could be dropped naked into a city and have 80% of my life back very, very quickly, I would say. And that's good. It's a nice little security blanket. It makes me feel safe. It makes me have very little fear of loss, but it's not aiming as high as I could. And that's a personal failing of mine. This failing also affects other areas of life. For example, there was a certain type of girl that for a really, really long time I had an insecurity about. I didn't think I was worthy of her. I didn't think she would choose me readily or openly. And that type of girl was the type of girl that was not only beautiful, but was also successful in life to the point where the amount of money I made didn't matter to her. Like, say if a girl's a multi-millionaire or a billionaire, or like an heiress to a huge fortune, and I'm making, like maybe even say 6 figures or something like that, that 6 figures is just a drop in the bucket to her. It doesn't mean anything. So the things that I'm ambitious about, the things that I care about, the things I'm moving toward wouldn't have relevance to her. And I knew that in the back of my head, and I would be insecure about that. And so I used to think that I didn't have anything to offer to those types of girls. I was like, look, I'm this guy that's amazing because I'm kind of the boy toy, and the fact that I'm fun and I'm good in bed and I can do all these things like with a girl's emotions, but I'm also the successful version. But then with those type of girls, I was like, well, look, there are better boy toys than me. They're like, they can get a porn star or just some like hot ass like athlete or something like that. And then there are guys who are more successful and actually have amounts of money that like pushes the needle in their finances. So really, I'm in this range of like irrelevant for them. And the fact of the matter is that's not true. Fact of the matter, that's not true, because what I really bring, what I've realized since then, is what I really bring is an experience to a girl, and what I really bring is an awareness of herself and an ability to grow to anybody in life. That's probably the biggest asset I bring, and I've realized that since, and now I don't have as big a problem with that. But again, because my self-perception was in a certain way, it held me back, and I actually made some very bad mistakes with girls like that. There was one girl I really, really liked, and she was like friggin' tall model. She'd like done modeling on the side just for fun. She's like a champion wrestler, for God's sake. Her father was like on the board of all these Fortune 500 companies. She went on a date with me, and she came to the date like super happy, super psyched, and then I just was boring and played it safe and didn't take any risks because I didn't think I was like had anything to offer to a girl like that. And the date was just ended up being bland and like just really kind of disappointing. And then at the end, when it was time to send her home, she was like, well, this sucks. I have no plans for tonight. I was planning on staying with you. But the date had gone so bad that she now couldn't. So she had actually come into the date based on our first interaction, based on before I knew all this stuff, when I was just treating her as a girl, so super into me that she basically had planned on sleeping with me, had planned on this being something really serious, and especially told all her friends about me, et cetera, et cetera. But I fucked it up because I got in my own head and I started to think myself unworthy based on her credentials, based on my own perception of life. Now, where does this come from? I personally think where this comes from is there's a principle in psychology called commitment and consistency. And what that basically means is that you have sort of a perception of yourself. You have a certain range of actions that you believe are things you do, a certain range of actions that you believe are things that you don't do. They're just not you. And anytime you do an action that's in the not you category, you have to either sort of selectively forget it happened or like write it off in some way, or you have to change your self-perception to fit that action. And so we get this self-perception of the narrative of our life. I like that phrase a lot, the narrative of your life. A friend of mine, when I was talking to her about this, told me that. She's like, don't get attached to the narrative of your life. I think that's really good advice. Don't get attached to the particular story that you're telling. Be flexible to other stories. Be flexible to the idea that something better could come along for you. It's so funny how people can be so caught up in what they're looking for that they fail to see when something better comes along. And I don't want you to be in that trap. I want you to really be open to those experiences and really think of yourself as the absolute best. The great thing for me, because I've become better and better at game and I'm getting better and better results with girls, I'm now dating the same types of girls that those truly, truly successful guys are dating. Like a lot of the girls that I date have dated rock stars and athletes and multimillionaires and self-made, like super successful people. And the great thing for me in terms of motivating me and in terms of getting me to that level of belief now is that they look at me and they, in their interaction with me, they're like, look, you're smarter than those guys, you're funnier than those guys, you're cooler than those guys, you have more going on for you than those guys. Why are you not taking over the world? Why are you not there? And it really makes me think. It really makes me think that maybe I am shortchanging myself. Maybe the view that I have of myself in my head is a fucked up view and that I need to step it up. And fortunately, the more I've done that in life with girls, in business, that sort of thing, every time I have allowed myself to step to a new level, I've fit into it very nicely. And so again, that makes me think that maybe I'm not stepping up as hard as I can, or maybe I'm not allowing myself that perception. Maybe I am still thinking in, maybe at this point I'm thinking in like tens of thousands, but I'm not thinking in hundreds of thousands or millions or billions, which is maybe what I should be thinking in. And so I allow myself to be held back. A great theory that I learned from a book, what was it called? Winning Through Intimidation. It's a great book, old book, but very, very good book about how to live life. He called it leapfrog theory, which basically what he said is you don't have to go through all the intermediate steps to get from A to B. If you're ready to go from A to B, it's fully okay for you to just skip everything in between and just go directly from A to B. You don't have to go through all the rigmarole, all the bullshit steps, all the failures and successes and little starts and stops. You can leapfrog over all that and go straight to B just by saying you're there and acting as though you're there. Now, if you try and do that, if you try and go from A to B and you're truly not ready for B, then the world can knock you the fuck back to A. So that's the alternate to leapfrog theory. The alternate to leapfrog theory is if you try and leapfrog and you're not ready, you will get hammered the fuck down by life. And that's why most people actually do go through that steady process and most people don't have those huge leaps forward. But to think that you're not ready for those leaps forward or to hold yourself back when you are ready is also a hugely flawed way of thinking. Okay, so what's the point of this video? The point of this video, I guess, is to show you a little bit about how your thinking can affect your world. Try and encourage you to actually think big to a certain sense, but even beyond thinking big, just allow big thinking, allow big thoughts into your world. Like when you think to yourself, maybe, who am I to think that? Who am I to do this big thing? Instead think, who am I not to? Who am I not to do this big thing? I mean, really, look at the people that are successful. Playing poker was a big realization for me in this. I played with all these rich, successful guys who were idiots at the poker table, couldn't figure shit out, right? And it really made me realize that a lot of times the people that are successful are just the people that got lucky or the people that had the belief to try something, not necessarily that they did it so much better. So allow that belief system into your head. Allow that belief system of huge success into your head and don't be held back. Allow yourself to take those big risks. Now, don't take those big risks in a way when you're not ready for them. And I mean ready in terms of the skills. I don't mean ready emotionally. And also, don't take the risks in such a way that if you fail, you'll lose everything you've built up. Take those risks with other people's money, or take those risks with on time that's outside of your work without giving up what you're doing. Don't relinquish everything you already have in order to take those risks, but do take the risks. Do allow yourself that, all right? A lot of times with students, they have the same issue with girls, which is failure to approach the hot girls, that sort of thing. And the best solution for them really is just to make them approach. What I will tell them is, look, you're allowed to suck. You're allowed to go in and do the worst approach I've ever seen ever in life. It's totally fine. If you walk over and you can't speak English, you go, fuck, bye. That's okay as an approach, but you're not allowed to not go. You're not allowed to not go, because by going, you put that gun to your head, you put yourself in that survival situation where something has to come out. And 9 times out of 10 what happens is once the student's there and they just don't have a choice, they've already done the approach, and actually the thing that will make them look the least like an idiot is doing the approach well, then they're fine. So it's kind of a situation where if you jump off the cliff, you have no choice but to fall, right? So just jump off the fucking cliff. All right, now obviously don't go fucking take that advice literally, but the point is just put yourself in that situation. Jump in the pool to see if you can swim. Make sure there's lifeguards there, make sure there's a way out, but jump in the fucking pool and see if you can swim. And if you can't, so what? You swim back, you put your tail between your legs, you go back to your regular life, it sucks for a minute, and then you try again later. But keep trying and keep yourself open to those big opportunities. Don't limit yourself to the scale that you've lived on so far. Just because you've never had a 10 before doesn't mean you can't have a 10 if you have good game. You don't have to go through the process of going 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s. Just because you're not used to getting into the best clubs doesn't mean that you can't meet the right promoter and all of a sudden be going to all the best clubs. It doesn't mean you can't have that great life event, okay? Try, or at least be open to the big life event as well as the small grind. Lastly, on the topic that your life is a manifestation of your self-perception, which I guess is the theme of this video, you might argue that, okay, yeah, your self-perception is one thing, but it's also how hard you work. Fair enough. You have to work fucking hard. You have to actually execute. But I'm gonna argue that that's a factor of self-perception as well. If you view yourself as lazy, you're gonna be lazy. If you view yourself as a hard worker, you're gonna be a hard worker. Also, if you view yourself as capable and deserving of an opportunity, you are going to work for it. Whereas if you believe that you can, if you believe it's a pipe dream, if you believe it's unmakeable for you, that's when you're not gonna work. If you view the work as meaningful, if you view the work as having a legitimate end, if you have that confidence in yourself, then you actually will work. So don't sell yourself short. I guess that's the point of the video. Do not sell yourself short. Believe in yourself and be willing to be open to those big experiences. All right, that's it. Take care.